Did you know that one of Judah's shortest-lived and most forgotten kings fought a battle where his only weapon was his voice, and that victory changed the course of history? Abijah, or Abijam, is not just a passing name in the royal genealogy. He is a man who, in the midst of his own inconsistency, understood a spiritual principle of power. His reign may have been short, but the event that defined it was monumental. Abijah was a leader who, despite his weaknesses, found unshakable strength in his faith. His story hides a secret about the power of a declaration of faith, even when it comes from an imperfect heart. Imagine a king with a reign that lasted only 3 years, but who, in his brief time, faced a national crisis that could have destroyed his kingdom. Abijah was not perfect, but he knew something profound about the essence of divine power. He knew that in the midst of chaos and disorder, a single word of faith could be the difference between life and death, between defeat and victory. But how could a man with such a short reign have such a lasting impact? To understand this, we must first delve into the national crisis that led to this decisive moment. We need to understand the context, the climate, and the circumstances that led Abijah to confront Jeroboam and his army of Israel. Only then can we appreciate the magnitude of his victory and the power of that one word that changed everything. At the heart of the Old Testament, we find a fascinating story of Abijah, son of Rehoboam and grandson of the great Solomon. His reign, though brief, was marked by a moment of national crisis that tested not only his leadership, but also the faith of his people. After Solomon's death, the kingdom of Israel split in two: Israel in the north, under the rule of Jeroboam, and Judah in the south, ruled by Abijah. Jeroboam, ambitious and determined, saw an opportunity to extinguish the southern kingdom and unify Israel under his command. With an army twice as large and the tactical advantage, Jeroboam surrounded Abijah's forces, bringing Judah to the brink of annihilation. The situation seemed hopeless, and defeat seemed inevitable. In 2 Chronicles 13 verse 3, we read, Abijah went out to meet Jeroboam with an army of 400,000 valiant warriors, while Jeroboam had an army of 800,000 well-trained men. The scales seemed to weigh heavily against Abijah. But while Jeroboam prepared for battle with weapons and strategies, Abijah did something unexpected. Instead of preparing his weapons, he prepared his speech. This speech, filled with truth and faith, contained a truth capable of turning the tide. But what exactly did Abijah say? And how could his words have such a profound impact? To find out, we need to delve into the mystery of that one word that changed everything. As King Jeroboam's forces approached, Abijah, surrounded and clearly at a disadvantage, made a bold decision. Instead of surrendering or preparing his men for a lost battle, he climbed Mount Zemaraim and delivered a speech that would echo through history. Abijah began by reminding the people of the Davidic covenant, a divine promise that guaranteed the royal lineage of David and, consequently, the legitimacy of Judah's reign. He condemned the idolatry of Jeroboam, who had introduced the worship of the golden calf, an abomination in the eyes of God. Abijah declared that Judah maintained the legitimate worshiping God as he had instructed through Moses. His speech was a powerful blend of historical remembrance and declaration of faith. In 2 Chronicles 13 verse 12, he proclaimed, "Behold, God is with us before us." This statement was not empty. It was a deep confidence in God's faithfulness to his own covenant. Although Abijah was not perfect, as recorded in 1 Kings 15 verse 3, he knew how to appeal to God's faithfulness. He knew that despite his own imperfection, God's promise was unshakable. His speech was not just an attempt to motivate his troops. It was a declaration of faith that was based on the eternal truth that God is with us, always before us. This proclamation of faith, coming from an imperfect king, unleashed something extraordinary. The supernatural response that followed redefined the boundaries of battle. showing that sometimes true victory does not come from weapons, but from unshakable faith in God. Abijah's speech resounded like thunder, but Jeroboam was not willing to back down. He advanced with his imposing army, ready to annihilate the forces of Judah. However, Abijah was not alone. The people of Judah, inspired by their king's faith, began to cry out to God. In 2 Chronicles 13 verses 14 to 15, we read, "When Judah turned around, they realized they were surrounded on all sides. Then they cried out to God, and the priests blew the trumpets. And as they cried out, God struck Jeroboam and all Israel before Abijah and Judah." The moment was dramatic and decisive. God intervened directly, and history changed course. Jeroboam's advance was halted by an unimaginable force. The army of Israel was defeated, suffering a great slaughter. Not only that, but Judah also regained territories that had been lost, re-establishing its sovereignty. The victory was complete and spectacular. But what does this say about the power of faith in God's covenant? This military victory, won by a flawed king, points to an eternal principle of spiritual warfare. It shows us that sometimes the greatest strength is not in weapons or numbers, but in unshakable faith in God. And this truth finds its highest fulfillment in a figure greater than Abijah, someone who, like Abijah, knew how to invoke divine power. We have reached the climax of this narrative, where the story of Abijah transcends time and connects with an eternal principle. Abijah, with his declared faith, showed that true victory comes from trusting in God's covenant. He appealed to the Davidic covenant and to proper worship, reminding everyone that God's presence was the guarantee of success. However, Abijah was only an illustration of something much greater. Christ, the eternal fulfillment of the covenant, is the true worshiper. He not only appeals to the covenant, he is the covenant. Abijah's cry led to divine intervention, but our confession of Jesus as Lord, as written in Romans 10 verse 9, positions us for an even greater victory. Abijah's battle was a symbol of the spiritual battle we wage daily. Just as he faced Jeroboam and his army, we face our own Jeroboams, the temptations, the opposition, and the circumstances that seem insurmountable. But victory does not come by our strength or ability. It comes by the power of the name above all names, Jesus Christ. Abijah's declaration of faith teaches us that when we stand in Christ, declaring his lordship over our lives, we receive the same divine intervention. But what Jeroboams surround us today? What are the battles that seem impossible to win? And how can we apply the same principle of the declaration of faith in our daily lives? The answer lies in our unshakable trust in Christ, the true worshiper and the fulfillment of the covenant. Are you surrounded by your own hosts of Jeroboam? Whether in adverse circumstances, fear, or spiritual oppression, Abijah's life teaches us that victory does not depend on our perfection, but on our positioning. In the midst of our inconsistency, we can, by faith, place ourselves under God's covenant and declare his faithfulness. Abijah was not perfect, but he knew where to find strength. And that strength is available to us today. Abijah's lesson is clear. Instead of surrendering to circumstances, we need to use the weapon of declaration. We need to cry out to God, declare his promises, and confess that God is with us. This declaration of faith is our most powerful weapon. It positions us for victory, even when all seems lost. But this journey does not have to be a lonely one. Imagine if each of us shared our declarations of faith with the community. Imagine the power of a multitude crying out to God, declaring his promise, and confessing his presence in our lives. Imagine the strength that comes when we unite in faith, declaring together that God is with us. In the next segment, we will prepare for this call, combining this powerful lesson with an invitation for all of us to share our declarations of faith. We have reached the end of this inspiring journey. but it is the beginning of a new stage for each of us. The story of Abijah has taught us that victory begins when we declare, by faith, God's sovereignty over our battles. Even with our imperfections, we can trust that God is with us. He is our strength and our victory. Now, we invite you to become an active part of this community of faith. Leave a comment with the phrase, God with us, as a declaration of faith in your own battles. Share in the comments a specific situation where you need to declare God's victory. Remember, the same God who answered Abijah's cry hears the voice of his children today. He is ready to intervene, to fight for you, and to bring victory in the midst of adversity. May this declaration of faith be a constant reminder that you are not alone. God is by your side, and His presence is your greatest strength. May God strengthen your faith, illuminate your path, and bring victory in all your battles. May the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus.